Hello and welcome to WorldatWork TV. I'm Tanya Adamski. Today we'll be talking with Kerry Chou, Practice Leader for WorldatWork. We'll be discussing the most recent research report, Compensation Programs and Practices. Welcome, Kerry.
Thank you.
Kerry, in the report, 85% of organizations reported that they like to target the median or the 50th percentile for base pay. Why do you think so many organizations are attracted to this specific practice?
Well, Tanya, we have seen this kind of what I call data convergence in this area over the past, really since the recession, past 5 or 6 years. A high percentage, as you mentioned, 85% of organizations are targeting the 50th percentile or the median. I think what this really gets to is simply the poor economy we've had over the past several years. The fact that there is not very much upward pressure on wages. Organizations simply don't feel the need to target their pay or to be overly aggressive in their pay practices. We see similar results in our annual salary budget survey, where almost all companies, about 85%, have set their salary budgets at between 2 and 4%. So again, a very high percentage of companies sort of targeting that middle ground until we get to a situation where we get to more of a buyer's market in terms of the labor market, where employees are feeling a little bit more confident, there's more opportunities, the unemployment has gone down and more employees are going back to work. Then you're going to start seeing companies having to get a little bit more aggressive with their pay.
Moving on to variable pay, in this survey we saw a statistically significant increase in 2014 over 2010 of organizations moving to bonus programs and away from individual pay incentives. What do you think is driving this?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Of course, variable pay is as popular as it has ever been. Well over 80% of companies have variable pay. And you're absolutely right. We saw significant increases in bonus pay activity, or the companies that are using bonus pay. It went up from 59% in 2010 to 82% in 2014, while at the same time individual incentives have dropped from 67% in 2010 down to only 42% in 2014. That's an interesting shift, and when we sort of take a look at the design of bonus programs, I think we may get some insight into what's going on. As I mentioned before, companies are not feeling a high need to increase their wages in a significant way above what their competitors are doing, but we still have a high need to attract and retain and motivate the top performers, those with hot skills, and so forth. And one of the key advantages of a bonus program is it's really an agreement that a company has with an individual. So a company doesn't necessarily have to do a company-wide program. I can look at you, Tanya, and say, hey, I want to keep you, I want to retain you, and so I'm going to offer you a bonus, and we want you to stay for at least another 12 or 24 months or what have you. So I think the fact that bonuses have gone up is indicative that companies are still wanting to target their reward dollars to certain individuals without having to necessarily give away money to everyone. Now, on that point, when we look at individual incentives, one of the downsides to individual incentives, and to be clear here, when we're talking about individual incentives, what we're talking about is all or at least a portion of a person's incentive payment is based on their individual performance. One of the drawbacks of an individual incentive program is that the company is more or less obligated to pay, assuming that individual employee meets their objectives. And so in situations where the economy is not doing well, where companies are having maybe some financial struggles, when you have an incentive program where individual objectives and performance is one of the chief criteria or criterion for payment, you can get into a situation where the company is paying out large sums of money when they in fact really can't afford it at the time. And so I think that's one of the reasons why incentive pay on an individual level has gone down. I would also just point out that I think that this is clearly a cyclical event, and it's in response to the economy. There's no reason to believe or feel that individual incentives as part of incentive programs is going to go away. In fact, it probably will gain some momentum and come back once, again, we start getting this upward pressure and wages start increasing at a higher rate.
So you think as wages increase, then we're likely to see those numbers even out a little bit more between bonus programs and individual incentives?
Yeah, I think so. At least for now, bonus programs make a lot of sense because organizations continue to have a desire to really target their high performers and those that they absolutely need to retain. So I see those continuing to be strong, and probably individual incentives will make a comeback.
We also saw in the report that only 28% of employees actually understand the organization's compensation philosophy. And furthermore, we saw that managers were only having brief conversations with employees about their individual pay. How do you think organizations could benefit from having a more detailed conversation with employees?
We're seeing those statistics, unfortunately, going the wrong direction. And only 28% of the respondents indicated that their employees understand the compensation philosophy. If we look at the sort of the flip side of that statistic, a full 46% of respondents said their employees largely don't or completely don't understand their compensation philosophies. We've been tracking those for a few years, and the percentage of employees that really don't understand the philosophy, unfortunately, are going up. So this is a concern. As you mentioned, the data, the survey findings indicate that most of the conversations or written communications that employees are receiving are brief, with a smaller percentage doing more detailed conversations or communications. Now, I honestly would not sit here really and prescribe, oh, well, if you want to be effective, you really need to have this percentage be brief, this percentage be detailed, you need to have a certain percentage of face-to-face and
there's no formula
intranet.
For this type of
Right,
thing.
there's no formula, and I wouldn't say there's any real prescription. What I would suggest and recommend to organizations is they look at the end result. Now, the end result, at least for now, is most employees are not really understanding the compensation philosophy. To the extent that each organization has a different makeup, a different group, demographic of employee populations, they need to look at their own employee populations and say, how do my employees, how do they digest information? What's the way that they like to receive information? That might be brief, that might be detailed, it might be written, it might be verbal. We use internet videos, town hall meetings with the CEO.
And when more employees understand the compensation philosophy, what kind of benefits can the organization find?
All of us are consumers, whether we're consuming, we're buying cars or we're shopping at the store. We are consumers, we're shoppers for employment, so to speak. And for those of us that are lucky to have a job or somebody that wants to offer us a job, that's wonderful. Some of us are lucky enough to have multiple organizations that want to hire us and have us work with them. Me, for example, as a consumer, or anyone as a consumer, is looking at which organization would I like to join. One of the key things that we're looking at, one of the key ingredients, is what type of compensation can I expect to receive? What kind of benefits? If I'm a high performer, can I expect to get a larger share of the rewards? How are your benefits programs? What are your time off? Are you flexible in your work arrangements? To the extent that employees or candidates understand how a company is positioning their pay and benefits and total rewards, they're better able to A, make a decision about whether they want to work for that organization, and B, they have a better expectation for what the deal is going to be for that employee if they work there.
So employees want to make informed decisions just like when they're consuming any other product.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Kerry. For World at Work TV, I'm Tanya Adamski.